Britain dreamed of ruling the skies, pouring everything into an airship so vast it could link London to India without touching the sea. But deep inside, R101's immense frame was a fatal flaw. Not enough lift to survive a single miscalculation. Each fix brought more risk, and still the schedule won. Why would a nation double down on danger until a single night erased not just a flagship, but the future itself? In the aftermath of war, Britain set its sights on the sky, determined to weave its empire together not by sea lanes but by air. The government launched the Imperial Airship scheme with a single audacious goal: to shrink the world, to make London as close to Delhi or Sydney as to Manchester. This was not a private gamble but a state-backed promise, led from the top by Lord Thomson, the Secretary of State for Air. Cardington became the heart of this ambition, a place where the world's largest airship sheds rose out of the countryside, dwarfing everything around them. Inside, engineers and workers built R101, the flagship of the scheme, a vessel designed to carry 100 passengers in comfort across continents and oceans. The airship was more than a machine. It was a symbol, a floating declaration that Britain would not be left behind in the new age of flight. Plans called for mail and travelers to cross the globe in days, not weeks. R101 was meant to be a flying hotel, a fortress of British engineering, and a beacon to every corner of the empire. The scale was staggering, over 777 feet from nose to tail, a crew of 40, and the promise of bringing distant colonies within reach. Every detail, from the promenade decks to the vast gas cells, served a vision that stretched beyond technology to the very idea of imperial unity. Yet behind the grandeur, the cost, technical, political, and human, was already mounting, hidden deep within the ship's great frame. Lift is the currency of every airship, and R101 was always short. The original calculations promised a gross lift of 151.8 tons, enough on paper to carry 100 passengers, their luggage, fuel for 2 days, and the crew who would guide the ship from England to India. But the reality was colder. When the hydrogen was measured and the ship was weighed for its first true flight, the numbers did not add up. The actual lift came in at 148.46 tons, more than 3 tons below the target. The structure, engines, and fittings tipped the scales at 113.6 tons, 8 tons heavier than planned. Every ton overweight was a ton lost from the ship's disposable lift, the margin meant to cover fuel, ballast, and payload. After accounting for the crew, stores, and water ballast, only a handful of tons remained for passengers and cargo. The margin for error narrowed to a sliver. In the heat of India, hydrogen would lose buoyancy and the ship would shed another 11 tons of lift. The engineers saw it in the numbers. R101's design could not deliver on its promise. Every flight was a negotiation with physics, and the ship was losing ground. There was no way to jettison weight in the air, no reserve of lift to draw on if weather turned or engines faltered. The difference between success and disaster was measured in tons, but the line was razor thin, one bad calculation away from catastrophe. The answer from Cardington came in steel and ambition. Stretch the ship, add more gas, and hope the numbers finally worked. In the spring of 1930, engineers cut R101's hull in two and inserted a new 46-foot bay midships, expanding the length to 777 feet, the largest airship the world had ever seen. This extension allowed for an extra gas cell, promising up to 9 more tons of lift. But every addition brought new weight, more girders, longer wiring, fresh stress points. The heavier structure demanded heavier engines. 5 massive Beardmore diesel engines were installed. They were twice the weight originally planned and only half as powerful. The lift gained in the new bay was quickly eaten up by the extra tons below. To keep the hydrogen bags in place, the team introduced a new harness system designed by Michael Rope. It was meant to cradle the gas cells gently, but in practice it let them surge against the frame, rubbing and chafing with every movement. Thousands of tiny holes appeared over the months, each one a slow leak in the ship's promise. The outer cover, too, was experimental. Untested fabric stretched thin over the world's longest skeleton, exposed to wind and rain. Each fix stacked uncertainty on top of risk. Every system, engines, gas cells, harness, cover was new, unproven, and now interconnected. The airship was no longer just heavy. It was a fragile experiment, a machine whose solutions had become their own hazards. The margin for error, once measured in tons, now shrank to inches and hours. The ship was growing more complex, but not more reliable. The clock was ticking, and the schedule would not wait. Lord Thompson watched the calendar more than the weather. The Imperial Conference in London was days away, and he was determined that R101 would be in India before the delegates left. For Thompson, this was not an engineering question. It was a matter of national pride, a statement that Britain's reach was as limitless as the Empire itself. Reginald Colmore, the director of airship development, stood by his side, smoothing over doubts and signing off on every rushed decision. The airship's final trial, a single 16-hour flight, was cut short by engine trouble. No full-speed runs, no extended endurance tests. There was just enough to say the ship had flown. The technical team wanted more time, but the order was clear. R101 would depart, ready or not. Senior officials, including Thompson himself, booked their cabins, turning the first overseas flight into a political spectacle. As departure neared, the shed at Cardington filled with dignitaries and tension. The schedule was now the master, and every cautionary voice was drowned out by the promise of glory. Rain hammered the hull as R101 slipped from Cardington into the black October night, engines drumming beneath sheets of water. Flight Lieutenant Carmichael Irwin took command with 54 souls aboard, steering a ship that was already heavy, already straining. The airship fought to hold altitude, but the numbers were unforgiving. 800 feet above the ground, with no room for error. Each gust pushed the world's largest airship closer to its limits. Wind battered the nose where the fabric had never truly been repaired. Water seeped through, weakening the cover, and the hydrogen inside began to bleed away. Irwin watched the trim gauges as the bow dipped, the margin for recovery shrinking with every passing mile. The crew worked the controls, jettisoned ballast, and tried to coax lift from a ship that had none to spare. Overhead, the sky pressed down. Below, the ground waited, in darkness and rain, with the airship's nose growing heavier, the line between flight and fall thinned to nothing. When the ground rose to meet R101 outside Beauvais, the crash itself was not a violent explosion, but a settling, an airship crippled and sodden coming to rest in the fields of northern France. For a few moments there was silence. Then hydrogen, leaking from torn gas cells, found a spark. In an instant, the ship became a furnace. Flames raced along the aluminum skeleton, consuming fabric, engines, and every hope of escape. 46 died at the scene, including Lord Thompson, Air Vice Marshal Branker, and nearly every senior official who had championed the program. 2 more would die from their injuries. Only 8 survived, pulled from the wreckage by villagers before the flames finished their work. By dawn, the pride of British aviation was a charred ruin. The government ordered R100 dismantled within months. The Imperial airship scheme ended not with a debate, but with a funeral. Britain's dream of ruling the skies died in the fire, leaving only ashes and silence where ambition once soared. Today, ultra-ambitious projects still hinge on a single margin: between vision and reality. When politics outruns caution, innovation turns hazardous.